Good morning. It's splendid to be back here after many schedule conflicts in the family during the summer. I'm excited to be back and to see all of you. For those of you who need them, there are assistive listening devices and a large print order of service. Someone can bring it to you if you raise your hand. My name is David Fryman, and today marks the first anniversary of my arrival with my son Will, so we could start high school in Lebanon rather than in Queens. And we left New York at 4:30 in the morning so I could sit up at McDonald's and use the Wi-Fi to log into work and punch in remotely. And we had to wait until after work hours to get that keys to the condo and move in with camp chairs and air mattresses. I don't know if an empty condo counts as glamping. A reading from the poet Howard Nemeroff. He was twice Poet Laureate to the Library of Congress and winner of the National Book Award and Pulitzer Prize. He was brother to photographer Diane Arbus, and they were alumni of my high school in the Bronx, and he visited us as a guest with my class. And the poem is about a father and a son. September, the first day of school. A school is where they grind the grain of thought and grind the children who must mind the thought. It may be those two grindings are but one, as from the alphabet comes Shakespeare's plays, as from the integers comes Euler's law, as from the whole inseparably the lives, the shrunken lives that have not been set free by law or by poetic fantasy, but may they be. My child has disappeared behind the schoolroom door, and should I live to see his coming forth, a life away? I know my hope, but do not know its form, nor hope to know it. May the fathers he finds among his teachers have a care of him more than his father could. How that will look, I do not know. I do not need to know. Even our tears belong to ritual, but may great kindness come of it in the end. We have a few announcements, and I'm going to invite the Chancellor, Megan Lancaster.
Good morning. So, this fall we will be restarting covenant groups. Thank you. Registration will be coming in the coming weeks. For now, I just want to talk to you a little bit about it to hopefully encourage. I hope many of you consider taking part in this experience. I hope also that if any of you have previously participated, you might consider being a leader, as we could always use a few more. Please feel free to ask me about signing up, or if you have any other questions. People take part in covenant groups for different reasons and experience them differently. For some, it is a chance to know their fellow congregants better. Others appreciate some time set aside each month to consider interesting and thought-provoking topics. Yet others take it as a guaranteed piece of time to be calm and reflective. So whatever the reason and whatever your experience, that's what's right for you. For me, covenant groups are one of the more important things I have done here and did in my Massachusetts congregation. I did so in person for 13 years in Massachusetts and still participate in that group via Zoom. And I participated here for 2 years. For all those years, I've met monthly with my covenant groups. And this has been a wonderful way to add something different to my church and spiritual life. But what exactly is a covenant group? Covenant groups are small groups of congregants who meet monthly to review and discuss readings related to specific topics or themes, with all the different groups following the same session plan. Conversations can be wide-ranging. Over the course of my years in covenant group, I've found myself considering the ways we can be compassionate, how to be heroes in our daily lives, and what I truly believe in, just to mention a few topics. For me, covenant group is sacred time. In my busy life, it's one of the few things I refuse to move, change, cancel, or reschedule. For me, those monthly meetings are sacrosanct. Why? Because I choose to make this a time for me, a time for calm and tranquility, a time for thoughtfulness. I find that these gatherings lift my spirit. I might have had the worst day, but then during check-in, I can put out there whatever is on my mind simply as a way to share so I can put it aside and focus on the rest of the session. Just that sharing itself without conversation or response is often a relief from the day. I've found that covenant group relationships are special and unique. I found there are ways and things we can talk about that I don't speak of elsewhere. Somehow for me, these groups are special, safe and sacred, and this allows for a bond that fosters sharing and growing. But lest you think it's all about me, it's not. This is a time each month where those of us in covenant groups actively and consciously listen to others. This is our chance to support each other, silently and with words, mentally and emotionally. This is a time to encourage one another when we struggle and to be happy for each other when things are good. Covenant groups can be intellectually interesting and a wonderful way to get to know a wider group of people. It can aspire to lift your spirits and forge deeper, stronger bonds amongst us. But know that the experience of covenant groups is often different for each person. I should probably say is always different for each person. Whatever you choose to put into covenant groups and whatever you get from it, my hope is that you simply feel good about participating and have a positive experience. Thank you for considering taking part, and more information will follow.
Good morning. So, 2 announcements. The first is, if you are so inclined, we'll be working in the permaculture garden after the service. After, grab a quick cup of lemonade, and I have extra tools if anybody wants to suddenly come and need something. So that's the first announcement. The second one, I know it's only the 1st of September, but the wreath sale, our preliminary order has to go in September 30th. We can add to it until the 15th of October, though they say to be really sure that we get what we want, we really need to have it in by the 30th. So I'm looking for people who would like to help. Maybe you have contact with a business and could talk to the people. I have a list of people that we saw last year. We brought $7,000 into the church last year, and I'd like to think we could do better this year. So please see me by phone, email, or just come see me in the garden. Thanks.
There are a lot of things going on at North Chapel each week, and so please take the time to read the many announcements in your order of service, and please visit the church website for all other news. Our minister, Reverend Leanne Dunkley, will be giving the reflection today, and Tatum Barnes is facilitating spiritual exploration with the children downstairs. If you're visiting today, we would love to have you sign the guest book in the vestibule, and I invite you now to all rise and introduce yourself if you're new. Okay? Oh, there was one? Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Please. Thank you.
Gene and Julie Cross, Bethel.
Great, thank you for coming. Everyone greet them. Someone else? Did I miss? Okay. After the service, as Mary mentioned, while we have comfortable weather, lemonade and refreshments will be served on the porch by the Finance Committee, so ask them your finance questions. The order of service contains a trigger warning for today's theme, genocide. This reading is from Samantha Powers, former UN ambassador. Citizens victimized by genocide or abandoned by the international community do not make good neighbors, as their thirst for vengeance, their irredentism, and their acceptance of violence as a means of generating change can turn them into future threats. In her book, she asks the haunting question, why do American leaders who vow never again repeatedly fail to stop genocide? Her book, A Problem from Hell, a topic of Leon's reflection, shows how decent Americans inside and outside government refuse to get involved despite chilling warnings, and tells the stories of the courageous Americans who did act. We'll now have a time for meditation, and after these words, we'll have a time of silent meditation and prayerfulness. St. Augustine said, God judged it better to bring good out of evil than to suffer no evil to exist. A poem by Mary Oliver, I Worried. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing, even the sparrows can do it, and I am, well, hopeless? Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing, and gave it up, and took my old body and went out into the morning and sang.
Good morning. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope this new day finds you well. Today is Sunday, August 32nd. And I insist on it being so. I apologize for being in denial. The title of this morning's reflection is Born Before the Wind. Welcome to the beauty that is before us on this day. Welcome to this morning star in flight. Welcome to the dreamers and the seekers of spirit. Welcome to the darkness and to the light. Welcome to the open and the broken and the blissfully imperfect, blessed and beloved. All of us are held whole and honored, everyone, by a love that knows no bounds. To all souls, I say good morning. It's good to be together. The opening reading for this morning is a piece of poetry from Jonathan Burke. There at the garden verge, I will pull you up in hope again. No more second thoughts will crowd you out of your desire. To be loved, not touched. To be blameless and ecstatic again. This is all there is, and no knowledge is too much to bear in the end. My mom taught me not to talk with my mouth full. So here are some great what ifs. What if in the Garden of Eden, Eve hadn't bitten the apple? Thank you, Eve. What if the serpent never tested her? What if she and Adam never got kicked out of paradise, ruining everything for the rest of us? We'd still be in Eden right now. I don't know otherwise. None of us do, and none of us can, but what do you think? Do you think that biting the apple was the right thing to do? When a woman broke the rule and chose to eat from the tree of knowledge. It was Eve's choice, and then it was Adam's, even though Eve was blamed for what Adam chose to do. How would it have been for you? Would you have been tempted to bite? I'm sorry, I didn't begin in the right place. I jumped the gun. I started in the middle of Genesis. I needed to start earlier in the text. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. The Spirit of God. This is the way the New International Version of the Bible put it. The New Revised Standard Version put it another way. When God began to create the heavens and the earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the deep. And while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. The wind from God. That's another way of putting it. There are many interpretations in the text, many different translations of the ancient language of the Bible. In Hebrew, the word ruach translates in many different ways. In the Tanakh, or the Hebrew Bible, the word ruach generally means wind, breath, mind, or spirit. In a living creature, the ruach is the breath, whether of animals or mankind. The creator of ruach is God. In the Tanakh, the word ruach appears 387 times. This word has different implications in each context. Different theologians see this word and its meaning in different ways, each to their gift. In the beginning of her book, in the preface of A Face of the Deep by Catherine Keller, just want to prove I was once a seminary student. A woman named Catherine Keller opens by quoting yet another version of the story. When in the beginning Elohim created the heaven and the earth was tahu and vabahu, meaning formless, empty, and chaotic. Darkness was upon the face of tehom, or the deep, and ruach Elohim vibrating upon the face of the waters. As Keller begins to write, she raises a powerful question. The undertow has gripped the wave. The salt washes the wound. We begin again, or not at all. What if beginning, this beginning, any beginning, or the beginning, doesn't lie back like an origin, but rather opens out? To begin derives from an older word meaning to cut open or to open up. It meant to gape or to yawn, as would a mouth or an abyss, as would a mystery. This opening that Catherine Keller references is both below us and above. It's both the ocean depths and the night sky ever expanding heavens. Everywhere we seek, there's a blessing. We were born before these stories of heaven and these stories of earth. In a sense, all of us were born before the wind, before the beginning, before the beginnings, before heaven, ocean, and earth, which is to say, in front of them. In the same way that I stand before you now, before you spatially, not temporally. We can read this word in different ways. All of these beginnings are stories of awe and fascination, are stories of beauty and impossibility becoming real, are stories of miracle and wonder, are stories of life and love and laughter. And not only there and then, but also right here and right now. The mysteries of heaven, ocean, earth are still unfolding. So once again, I ask you, would you have been tempted? Would you have been like Eve? Would you have left Eden's apple unbitten? The Bible is like a poem. It rarely distills, it rarely reduces down to law and policy. It's not mundane. The Bible often offers meanings that are symbolic. It's prayer more than policy. It's meant to set us free. It's not meant to imprison us. It seems obvious, so obvious, but we forget this all the time. It would be meaningless, how could it not be, to make laws against eating apples? That just trivializes the holy, doesn't it? It reduces us and trivializes us. Aaron Sorkin wrote about this process in a West Wing episode. Through the camera, he was preaching to us. President Bartlet was in the White House, and he was speaking before a group of high-powered journalists journalists who worked in the corporate media companies, and he found that he could not help himself. He had to dress one of them down, a high-powered journalist who had misused the Holy Bible. Interrupting his own prepared remarks, he said, "I'm sorry, are you Dr. Jenna Jacobs? I'm glad that you're here. I like your show," he said. "I like how you call homosexuals an abomination." And Dr. Jacobs fought back, and she said she didn't like being singled out. So she retorted, "I didn't say that homosexuality was an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does." And she was correct. It says so in Leviticus. I will not read that passage to you. The Bible says a lot of crazy things. One must quote things in the proper context. Dr. Jacob was not being careful, and President Bartlett went to work. He said, "I would like to ask you a couple of questions while you're here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery, as is sanctioned in Exodus 21, verse 7. She's a Georgetown sophomore and speaks fluent Italian and always clears the table when it's her turn. What would a good price for her be?" My chief of staff insisted on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35, verse 2, clearly says that he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police? He thundered on, because the Bible says a lot of crazy things. We make sense of these, but with love, even though we are tempted to do otherwise. The shining apple in our time is not the one in Eden. Tracy Chapman implies this in her poetry when she sings, "Don't be tempted by the shining apple. Don't you eat of the bitter fruit. Hunger only for the days of justice. Hunger only for a world of truth, because all that you have is your soul." Here, the enticing apple is greed. Here, the forbidden fruit is injustice. The Eden story is shared by Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. What tempts us right now does not fall from the limbs of flowering trees. What tempts us right now is the sword of cultural identity. It's one thing to know and be proud of one's family line, one's heritage. It's another thing entirely to wield that knowledge like weaponry. As a theologian, I am not concerned about the postmodern apple and its powers of attraction. The word apple, by the way, unlike ruach, appears in none of the Bibles that I've referenced. They do say forbidden fruit, but they do not say apple. Apple is the myth that we've delivered to the book of Genesis. It's not a part of the theology that we've derived from it. In ministry, I am not concerned with apples. I'm concerned and deeply concerned about the low-hanging fruit of cultural division and about the violence and the rage that happens in the name of faith. We have drifted from the Eden of our dreams, and in its absence, sometimes we make a hell on earth. According to the HarperCollins Dictionary of Religion, the full entry of Eden reads as follows. Eden, in the Hebrew Bible, a garden planted by God and containing the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Adam and Eve, first man and woman, lived in Eden until their disobedience and expulsion, Genesis 2-3. Also see Adam and Eve, fall, and paradise. Just 49 words. For as large as Eden figures in the religious imagination, doesn't that entry seem rather small? Eden is loosely defined, largely unimagined. It's a time and a place into which we place the story of our innocence. Irretrievably, we think, sometimes. Eden is also is the almost magical time and place out from which we draw a hope for our salvation. What are we doing? What are we doing with this? What do we imagine? Why do we imagine that Eden is far away and not in downtown Queechee, for example, not in Heartland or Barrie? Why are we in the habit of thinking that heaven is remote. Patty Cathcart sings, "What are you waiting for? Believe in me. Isn't it love in this life that you need? You can offer your soul on an altar of sacrifice, but give your heart to me. Let's bring heaven down here. Let's bring heaven on down. I don't want to wait for the angels. Let's bring heaven down here." Patty Cathcart is very wise. It takes wisdom to be an artist these days. Maybe it always has. She and her husband are artists of the first degree. They are featured centrally in the TED Talks this year in TED Talk Heartland. TED Talk Heartland, we should go. If you're interested in going, let me know. Let me know if you're interested. It's going to be fantastic. Like heaven, Eden figures as the cornerstone of our need for faith and grace. Everything is conditioned by the fall. Think on it. If we had never been expelled from Eden, all would be easy now. We'd all still be in paradise. Can you imagine that? Yet somehow, we know so little about Eden, and maybe somehow Eden knows so very little about us. Dana Kurtz, a dear friend of mine, wrote a song many years ago. It came to mind in the writing of this reflection. Her song was called "This Side of Eve." Fearlessly and shamelessly, but not confessionally, she wrote this passage. "Oh, Father, I have sinned, but it got so much better when the easy ended. You can't make me go back again, and not until I've shown you this side of Eve. If we were shaking with knowledge, then that would be real, and not wincing from punches, we can't feel it. This place doesn't know me, so there's nothing to leave." She is not irreligious. She is engaging the text honestly and in deepest faith. The easy that she sings about is Eden as I see it. Is that how you heard her words? "Oh, Father, I have sinned, but it got so much better when the easy ended." The easy life ended and the expulsion began when Eve and Adam ate from the tree of knowledge. This was forbidden by rule within the story of their world way back then. But how well does this rule conform to the needs of our world today? How well does it fit the daily news? Here's what PBS NewsHour had to say just 2 short days ago when the story was breaking, posted on August 30th at 6:40 p.m. Women in Afghanistan, including girls as young as 10, are now barred from attending schools and colleges. A new law passed last week states women are forbidden from looking at men they are not related to and barred from being heard in public. A woman calling herself Sarah identified, "You're not allowed to go to restaurants or university, nowhere but just your home, because they say the place for the woman and the young girls is in the home. It's like being in jail, but your prison is your home." For her own safety, Sarah would not use her own name. The idea that a woman, or any of us really, should be forbidden from speaking in public or forbidden from exploring the possibilities of one's own life is not something that I know how to understand. Is not something to which I can bring a sense of spiritual resolution within the boundaries of a Sunday's reflection or within the span of a lifetime. There's this thing called theodicy. Is anybody a fan of Breaking Bad? I know that might seem a disjuncture. Breaking Bad is a story about a man named Walter White who discovers that he has an incurable disease, and he doesn't want to leave his family without financial resources, so he tries to raise money on the side before he passes away. The way that he knows how to do this is he's a chemist by training. And the way he figures out how to raise enough money for his family moving forward is by selling methamphetamine on the black market in Albuquerque. Now, I watched that show. I watched all 7 seasons of that show. It's a terrible, terrible show. It's violent, it's criminal, they do terrible things, bad things happen. And by season, sort of like towards the end of the 7 years of series, I really lost faith in Walter White. I went back because I wanted to find out at what point along that 7-year journey did I just finally break with him? You know, what did he do that was finally so bad for me to be like, I can't even believe in him anymore. I was hoping that it was going to be in season like 4, like early enough so that I could preserve my dignity. But it was actually like at the end of season 5. But the bad thing is that when I started to rewatch the series to find out when things went bad for Walter White in a terrible way, it was about 26 minutes into the first episode in season 1. I didn't have a mechanism to understand what evil is. Theodicy is a theological mechanism that lets us understand evil. So I want to share a song with you, something that Dylan wrote, and then close with a little passage that's in our hymnal. But Dylan wrote a song about a man named Riley. It's a song called 7 Curses. I was just at a board meeting at Star Island, and I was playing guitar by myself, for myself, in a sort of quiet section of the lobby. And this woman came up and sort of annoyingly stood 10 feet away and just listened to what I was playing. And I was really aggravated, and I finally looked up at her, and she was singing the words with me. So I was like, thank you. And it was this song called 7 Curses, which is a terrible song. Okay, here's the story. Old Riley stole a stallion, but they caught him, and they brought him back, and they laid him down by the jailhouse ground with an iron chain around his neck. And when Riley's daughter got the message that her father was going to hang, she rode by night and came by morning with gold and silver in her hand. And when the judge saw Riley's daughter, his old eyes deepened in his head, and he said, "Gold will never free your father. The price is you, my dear, instead." "I'm as good as dead," cried Riley, "and it's only you that he does crave, and my skin will surely crawl if he touches you at all. Get on your horse and ride away. Oh, Father, you will surely die if I don't take a chance and try, and pay the price, and not take your advice. For that reason, I will have to stay." And the gallows shadows shook the evening, and in the night a hound dog bayed, and in the night the ground was groaning, and in the night the price was paid. And the next morning, when she had awoken, she found that the judge had never spoken. She saw the hanging branch abandoned, and she saw her father's body broken. These be 7 curses for a judge so cruel that 1 doctor cannot save him, that 2 healers cannot heal him, and that 3 eyes cannot see him, that 4 ears cannot hear him, that 5 walls cannot hide him, that 6 diggers cannot bury him, and that 7 deaths will never kill him. Dylan sets up a means for us to imagine a really rough man. Dylan sets up a way for us to think about how evil exists in our world. On the cover of your order of service is a woman whose name is Samantha Powers. Samantha Powers has worked her entire life. She's 5 years younger than me. She's born in 1970. And she's worked her entire life in the highest reaches of government, trying to find ways of creating peace around great conflict. She is immensely concerned about the issue of genocide. She's working tirelessly and as hard as she possibly can to bring resolution. I wonder if it's possible, as outrageous as the situation is in the world. I wonder if it's possible or useful for us to take a step back from our righteousness and step towards a deeper understanding of just how hard it is to make change. Samantha Powers said, "I believed that the most important part of decision-making was not the justness of one's intentions, but the effectiveness of one's actions." She said, "We can't only try diplomacy after countries have done what we want." And most powerfully, she said, "It is important not to shun those with whom we disagree." She said, as theologian Reinhold Niebuhr once said, "We must always seek the truth of our opponent's error, and we must always seek the error of our own truth." This is just as important in domestic politics as it is in our foreign dealings. In order to get there, in order to accomplish all of this, it's good to practice the Litany of Atonement, and I want to close with this idea. The Litany of Atonement is listed in your hymnals as reading number 637. I want to ask you to open up to reading number 637 at the back of the hymnal now. This particular passage was written by a former mentor of mine whose name is Rob Eller Isaacs. Beautiful man. He's gone now. But he's a beautiful man, and he knows a lot about humility, in spite of the fact that he's one of the most headstrong people I have ever known in my life. He was always quick to put us in our place. We lived in Hennepin County in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is Lutheran heavy country. And he was always proud of saying, "There are more Lutherans in Hennepin County than there are Unitarian Universalists in the world." And that's true. So what I'd like to do is practice the Litany of Atonement, the one that he wrote, exercise some forgiveness, and breathe some gentleness into our soul, a gentleness that does not step away from the fierceness and the passion that we have around peace, ceasefire, and justice, but a humility that will understand that this problem is complex and that we'll move together to its end and back to Eden slowly. So I will read the verses, and I'll ask you to read the refrain. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our fears made us rigid and inaccessible. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time our greed has blinded us to the needs of others. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of admonitions of the Spirit. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Let's read this last one together. For these and for these many acts, both inevitable and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Thank you, Eve. May it be so. Blessed be.